Your platoon had some, let's just say, pipe hitters in it, right? I mean, you guys had some heavy hitters in that platoon.
Yeah.
More so than in my first platoon. We had great guys in my first platoon, but the guys that you had in your platoon were harder. Straight up. There's no real other way of putting it. They were harder on you guys for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky in the sense that I wasn't the main target. I mean, I was targeted. I mean, there was a situation we had down in Panama, like with the hazing, that was really extreme.
Yeah.
You know, and some injuries happened. I got choked out at least 5 times that night, at least.
Yeah.
And beaten. You know, it was. That platoon was pretty hardcore.
Yeah, I've told a story on this podcast a couple times about like when I got to the team and I'm sitting out by the or I'm out doing a workout on the pull-up bar and this giant human, like barely human, goes lumbering out across it's probably 200, maybe even 100 yards from like the team area to first lieutenant where the engines are. And it's a guy from your platoon. You know who it is, the biggest guy in your platoon.
Yeah.
And he's carrying a gallon of milk with him. And so he's lumbering across, this giant guy with his whole body tattooed, no shirt on, and he stops like at the 50-meter mark and drinks a half a gallon of milk. And then he puts it down and then he keeps walking. And I'm like, how am I going to survive in this environment? Because it was a very hostile environment back then, you know, very hostile in the SEAL platoons. And you know what? Not a lot of it. Let's just say some of it was wrong. Some of it got taken to a point where it was not good for morale. It wasn't good for unity. You know, some of the hazing got to a point where you're like, hey, that's not okay. Like, that's wrong. Some of it's good, you know, some of it's okay, you know, welcome to the teams, and it's a rough environment. If you screw up, you're going to pay. But yeah, some of it went overboard. But yeah, you had a hardcore platoon. And when we got overseas, we were, you know, what I remember is an old Master Chief who seemed like the oldest guy I'd ever seen in my life, which was Steve Bailey, you know, and he was probably like 7 years younger or 8 years younger than I am right now. He's probably like 40, but he seems so old. And he's like, does anyone here want to learn how to fight? And I'm like, yep, me. And I guess, I don't know if we were together when that happened, but we ended up in the Kwanzaa hut with mats on the ground, and he knew enough jiu-jitsu. He was like a white belt.
No, my recollection's different. So the first deployment overseas, that platoon,